Good morning, everyone. It is Velva Silver, and I am here on Wisdom Weaver. I am excited because today, my good friend Erica Andries is going to be joining me here soon, and we're going to be sharing and talking to you. Here she is, right here. Well, that was easy.
Hi. Very
Hi.
easy. This is my first time doing a live, so thank you so much.
That is. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear
I
me?
can. Okay, it's good
Okay, awesome.
because I don't hear you in my earphones, but I hear you externally. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, just a sec. I'm gonna see if. Okay, it'll work. Okay, so welcome.
Thank
You
you.
look beautiful and
Thank
radiant.
you.
I love your wallpaper.
Oh my gosh, I'm obsessed with this.
It's beautiful. So why don't you share with everybody who's watching a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Okay, so I'm Erica Andries, and I am a registered massage therapist. That is my main training. But I am slowly moving towards doing more energy and spiritual work. So I took my Reiki Master Certificate. Actually, I studied at Mount Royal University for my Reiki Master Certificate back in 2014. And over time, I've just slowly evolved and started working more towards quantum healing. And I've taken my Dolores Cannon hypnosis technique. And yeah, so I facilitate a lot of galactic quantum healing sessions one-on-one. I do a few sound bath meditations in a group setting, and I will be doing more work with mentorship coming up here soon. So my passion is working with people, working with enlightening them, empowering them, men, women, children as well. I love working with the little because they're the next generation. So yeah, that's me.
That they are. And thank you for sharing all of your gifts, and the work that you do is incredible. I can attest to that.
Thank
How I met Erica is I went for a session with her, and then we were trading sessions, and that's kind of how this journey began of Beavis and Butthead, shall we say.
Yeah.
The Gypsy Sisters began touring to Egypt. So what we're going to do, I see lots of you are joining on here, lots, and you're wanting to hear, all of the things that we did, the things we loved the most, and what our experiences were during this trip. And it was incredible. So why don't we begin with, why were you guided to go to Egypt?
Okay. So I started a travel journey back when I was, I think, 20. I started getting intrigued with traveling and I wanted to explore. It was interesting because at that time I actually looked into the meaning of my name, and my name is Eternal Ruler. But when I first traveled abroad, I actually went to Bali. And there I spoke with all different types of people from everywhere. And the name Erica was very popular in all different types of regions of the world. And that's when I felt like I wasn't supposed to be in one place. And so that kind of sparked my desire to explore. And I hadn't traveled actually since. So Egypt was always on my radar to go to. I think it is for a lot of people just because of the mysteries and the energies there. And so I was drawn to Egypt, especially now, because of my journey in my evolution in what I'm supposed to be doing. I feel like Egypt would be a huge catalyst for me to awaken and really allow for myself to encode all of those frequencies of where I originally came from in order to then put that out into the world. So it was really big for me this year, and it kind of just fell into place just as it did with you. So I'm so grateful that we got the chance to do this together. And yeah, it was incredible.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that. I can't say enough about how easy it was and how it just all flowed. So for me, I remember being in grade 5, and the teacher said in social studies, what would you like to choose to do for your project for social studies? And I chose the Great Pyramid. And I actually constructed it in 3D, in grade 5 as best you could out of cardboard. And I always wanted to go there, and I never knew why. So being like you, I began to discover in working with the work that I do with the gods and goddesses and the different quantum physics. And I knew that this was a place I needed to go to remember more of who I was and to connect with the sacred land, because my belief and knowing is that when you put your hands on something or you stand in the soil that you've stood before, that you begin to remember parts of yourself that, you know, have been dormant. And we're going to sort of go all out there during this interview. I'm not going to sort of keep it at bay. There's Jennifer Benstead joining us. And Jennifer is actually the reason that Erica and I know each other. So thank you, Jennifer. She said to me, you have to go meet my friend Jennifer. She is amazing. And so thank you, Jennifer, for introducing us. So let's begin by our journey. So we had an 11-day journey in Egypt with Marie Coverley and her Tablets of Light tour. And it was incredible. It was, we kind of called it the spiritual amazing race.
Yes. Yeah, it was. It was
right. It was not for the faint of heart. It was like, I think we arrived in Cairo at, what time was it? 11 or 1 o'clock?
11:30. And then they had the time change at 12 to 1 o'clock. And then we had to be, they're ready we got up at 4:30 and ordered coffee to our room.
That's right. That's kind of what we did. And with the, Egypt is 9 hours ahead. And so we were just like we were like that the whole time. It was like, hey, what time do our alarms have to be set? And where are we off to? But you know what? I wouldn't change it for anything, because we were lucky to be able to encounter so much. So let's begin on our first day, really, that we began. And let's just begin with your experience of the Great Sphinx.
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, driving up to the pyramids of Giza, you're just like, that's the first encounters of seeing them. And it's funny because they're kind of in the middle of the city, right? So you're just kind of like, oh, here's the city skyline, and then here's the pyramids. And so, you know, immediately I just wanted to go in and see everything and touch, obviously being very respectful. But that Sphinx was just like breathtaking. And in the sunrise too, I remember so many times the sun would just, you know, begin to glisten at perfect times, and to be in between the two paws of the Great Sphinx was just fully activating. I remember getting fully downloaded with the Lemurian light code frequencies, but also receiving a new light code energy that I drew out. But probably the only thing that I did journal there, because at that point my brain wasn't completely full with information and I could streamline it. But yeah, I remember just remembering exactly what you said. You become so fully activated. And even if you don't really know or comprehend what is going on, you know something is happening at a cellular level. Your DNA is actually, I don't know, I can picture it like sparking. It's like these fireworks start going off and the neurotransmitters start, you know, moving through the body. And it's truly an invigorating and effervescent feeling of just being there and experiencing it. Because at some point, we had all been there together, the divine sisterhood of, you know, 7 women. So it was a very, very special first encounter.
It was. And I agree with you too. I remember we were driving by on the bus and we looked and it was like, there's the pyramids, right? It was this awe moment of there they are right in front of us. And just, you're right, at the sunrise, you know, the energy of the new dawn, which we experienced many times, which we'll get into in the next, you know, 45 minutes, about, you know, the power of the new dawn and the sunset, and how those, the energy of the sun actually helps activate those codes. So then let's talk about riding the camels, right? Were you afraid at all to ride the camel, or?
I was really excited. I'm not afraid of animals. I mean, I live on an acreage. We don't have any large animals here, but I've been around them before. I've ridden horses bareback. Actually, at one point, I was 6 years old, and I think my dad took my sister and I to Kananaskis, and the horse that I got, his name was Mike, and he was vicious. Like, I think at one point he had bit another horse in the eye, and when I was on him, he ran off from the group. So I wasn't afraid. I knew that I'd be fine. The camels were just so cute. Getting on them, I've always seen, how their knees kind of go the opposite way, and it was quite an experience. And yeah, I think your camel, Bob Marley, they had funny names, and ours had almost like tattoos kind of shaved into them. And yeah, it was really cool to experience them up close and personal like that, and how wobbly they are, and seeing their feet and how they kind of morph around the sand as they walk. I wasn't sure how they, the structure of their feet. Again, horses, they have hooves and they have shoes, whereas the camel, like, it's just interesting how their feet splay over the sand to accommodate their weight bearing needs, I guess. So yeah,
Mhm.
I wasn't afraid, and I really enjoyed it.
Right, I did too, and I have to say that they were treated very well. The
Yeah.
camels that our group chose to affiliate with. So actually, all of the animals that our group affiliated with, whether it was the horse-drawn buggy, which we were praying that we just got there, or the camel, they
Yeah.
were truly very well treated, and it was amazing. I know he gave me the one rein and he said, okay, here you go. And I thought, okay, this is like a horse, right? And my camel was sort of veering to the rocks, and I just pulled him over. And then, when we were dismounting, you had to remember to lean back, right? Because
Yeah.
they're so tall, which is quite different. But yeah, Bob Marley was pretty cool. I really enjoyed that
Yeah.
experience.
Oh yeah, it
Um,
was amazing.
right? So the other thing that we were very fortunate to do, and I highly recommend this if you are going to go on a trip to Egypt, is we actually had the Great Sphinx to ourselves for 2 hours with our group of 7 people. And it was incredible. You've probably seen some of my pictures where, you've got the Great Pyramid and there's a small opening as you sort of walk up. You go into the middle, and we actually started at in the base of the Great Pyramid. So do you want to share a little bit about your experience in the base, in the Queen's
Oh,
Chamber, and then in the King's Chamber?
well, that was so cool. The having the Great Pyramid to ourselves was amazing, and to experience. Marie had even said herself, not many groups actually get the chance to go through all 3 chambers, because with such a large group, it takes quite a long time to descend down that tunnel, which was like, oh my gosh, we chose to not wear shoes. So here we are in this tiny little tunnel. I had my backpack on, and you're ducking down the entire duration. And they had not in all parts, but they had a tiny little like pipeline screwed to the wall as a railing that was just, wobbly. And you're going down on this wooden slat with metal pieces to kind of act as little steps, which you can imagine in bare feet was not the most comfortable. But it was fun. I think you and I made light of everything. Like, we were laughing and joking, and there was a few people who felt uncertain. I mean, confined spaces, that can bring up a lot. But when we kind of came through the end of that tunnel, it felt like a rebirth going into that lower chamber. And we all sat in circle in ceremony, and we drummed and we chanted, and we went into a deep state of meditation. And that was so powerful in there. We heard noises as well at one point. And the photos, like, I mean, that one photo that I had gotten from, there was 2 women who felt like they were in a vortex. And I had snapped a picture of them, and literally it looks like a vortex around them. So that was amazing, just to be there. At one point, I had a little bit of a thought of like, all of this could come crashing down at us at any single point, but I was fine with it. If I go at the base of the Great Pyramid, I'm fine with that. And so after that, we kind of came back up and went into the Queen's Chamber, which is kind of the middle. And that one we had to be quick with. I believe that we kind of started the chanting and the drumming before the entire group had actually gotten there, just because we were on a time crunch and we really wanted to get to the top, because that King's Chamber is where the sarcophagus is situated. And of course, you all want to experience that. And Marie had told us that we would get the chance to, each of us individually, lay within that. So I was just like, get to the top. That was my goal. And so, again, we come out of the Queen's Chamber, we make our way up, and at this point it was a little bit, we had to be a little bit faster. And so once we got up there, it was just like, oh my gosh, looking into that sarcophagus for the first time. Well, first of all, my eyes played tricks on me. You're looking into this like deep basin, and it almost looks like someone's laying there. and you can just feel the energies of the celestial realms, for me anyways, because that's what it was all about, for the person to lay into the sarcophagus and be able to leave their body, explore the astral realms, and come back down. And so that was remarkable. I think, did you go first in the sarcophagus, or who
I
laid
did.
first? Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
And then the drumming, and it was just, remarkable. Like, it's something you'll never forget. And to experience that, and to see each and every person experience something different in that chamber, was just, oh man, you left feeling completely like a new person, especially after such a busy, packed day one.
And that's what I want to say too is, I love that you said, if it's my time to go and I'm at the base of the Great Pyramid, then it's my time to go. It makes me laugh because I've been, in the Yoni caves over in Hawaii, where same thing, if there's an earthquake, I'm in there, with my 3 girls and my friend Angela, and no one knows we're in there. And I had that thought too. Here we are in the base of the Great Pyramid, and if there's an earthquake or anything, here we are.
Yeah.
This is where we go down. But it's just the deep trust that I believe that too, of wherever, if it's my time to go, it's my time to go. And so I'm with you on that. And what I want to say is, I had someone mention to me, so for those of you that don't know what a sarcophagus is it's made out of granite, and it's just like a rectangle, it's like a coffin, right? But it's what the Egyptians used to ascend to the afterlife. They would put the mummies in there, and they used it for that ascension process. And I didn't feel at all creepy with it. In fact, I felt very honored that we had the ability to be able to be in that space and lay in that granite sarcophagus and actually experience the energy of that.
Yeah, it was amazing. We had fun with it all too. I mean, you can't be too serious in there. So there was lots of laughs in between. And, then we saw the next day that Nick Carter was there.
Yeah.
Remember?
That's right.
And turn up, his friend had taken the same journey that we did. Who knows if they were able to do all 3 chambers, but yeah, they were there the next day.
Mm-hmm. That's very true. I remember that. And you're right. You do have to. Okay, so that was the Great Pyramid, and it was just, I don't know, I just felt so grateful that we had the whole entire pyramid to ourselves for 2 hours. So I highly recommend to find a guide that can do that for you, if that is the case. Okay, so let's move on to the step pyramid. Let's move on to that and what experience that was. Do you want to, should we briefly talk about our experience with our legs dangling over?
I think so. So, without sharing so much, but yes, I think we should. I mean, it's part of our trip, it's part of our journey. That was probably the biggest adrenaline rush for both of us. So we have to talk about it.
Okay, so go.
Okay, yeah. So we were given an opportunity. So at the Step Pyramid, which is the oldest pyramid in Egypt, there adjacent to it is something called the Serapeum. The Serapeum is very well known because there's so much mystery that lays there. Again, there's sarcophagus, just like what Velva was just talking about. But these ones are much larger scale. Each sarcophagus is 100 tons, and there's so much mystery of how they got there. The granite slabs are all one piece. And they are actually from the Nubian village, which are hundreds of miles away. So for them to be transported and to be all one piece, nothing really makes sense when it comes to man-made, materials there. We were given the opportunity to go into one of the sarcophagi there. And so we kind of had to pay off a guard to let us go into one of these spaces. Now, when we go, it's all very secret, right? And so we go behind, we kind of climb down, because again, these things are huge. We have to climb down. I'm in a dress at this point, so we're kind of trying to, be ladylike about it. And we reach the area that we can go and put our legs into the sarcophagus. So in this area, the top of the sarcophagus in most of the sarcophagi are actually slid off a little bit. And so when we put our legs down, I was like, no, we can't jump down there. You know, if Velva went into it, it would probably be at her head, and getting out of there would be. And so we were told to duck down and be quiet. So then two other guys come, and I thought it was our guides, and I thought that they were saying, "Hey, let's go, let's go." And so I'm, duck down. We're all quiet, and I look up, and it's not our guides. And so I look down. I'm like, oh my gosh, we could get kicked out. And our hearts are pounding. And they're like, hey, hey, you're not supposed to be in there. Hello, hello. And Velva and I are looking at each other. And actually we were accompanied by Brendan, Marie's husband, who wanted to come with us. And we were all like, oh, God, like trying to be quiet. But I mean, at that point they had seen us. So we had to get out, and it was fine. Waleed, the Egyptologist who was with us, he was totally cool about it. But we were like, that could have been bad.
I know. And I was thinking, because my boyfriend had said to me, Dawn, if you get in trouble over there, you know, give me a call. I'll already start thinking about how to get you out of Egypt. And I was thinking of that in that moment. Uh-oh, this is my one phone call, right? And so I was thinking, oh, I'm going to make that phone call. And then, so it was that moment where it was like the little girl was like, oh no, I'm in trouble. But at the same time, it was like, you just had to experience it, right?
Yeah.
And the opportunity was there. And of course, we're the first two to put our hands up.
And
Like
we were the only two that got to do that then, because afterwards, of course, they're like, yeah, we're not doing that anymore. So it was all worth it in the end.
It was all worth it, right?
Yeah.
I know.
Oh my God.
You got to live on the edge, right?
Literally, and no pun intended, we were sitting on the edge of the sarcophagus.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that was amazing.
Yeah.
And then we had an experience in the step pyramid, which was incredible. So the one thing in Egypt is you're not supposed to chant or drum or sing, I believe, in any of the pyramids or the temples, right? And we went in with this group, and they were all women, and they all had scarves on their heads, which we did in many temples just out of respect. And we knew, we could feel intuitively that they were also very spiritual. And our guide, Waleed, said, let's shut the lights off. Would you guys like to chant? And so they shut the lights off, and we all chanted together the Om chant. And it was just vibrating off the walls, and then there was the group hug at the end. And do you want to share your part about that?
Yeah, that was such a sacred union. I believe that even just the full moon that we encountered while we were there, the May 5th 5/5 portal, that was a huge, for my opinion, was a huge activation of the divine feminine. And this group of all women from the Ukraine, we came together, we were humming, you could just feel the frequency of the bees. And we all had this group hug, and we were, chanting the Om, and it was, very symbolic as well, because in Egypt there's a lot of I guess part of their, I don't know what you would call it. One of the big unions is between the East and the West. And so us being, the North Americans from Canada and from the US, coming together with the Ukrainian women was just exactly that, the divine union between the East and the West, also the activation of the divine feminine. And it was so powerful. Some of these women were in tears. And it was just such an incredible moment to just, not really think it was going to happen, and just for it to happen so organically. It was beautiful. And with the lights out, they turned the lights out in that whole tunnel. So yeah, that's one moment as well that it just, it brings you back, and it just warms your heart.
Mm-hmm. It does warm your heart. I'm like, okay, how are we going to get through the rest of these days? We got a lot of days. Okay.
Sorry, I'll keep it short.
No, it's good. But I'm just like looking at everything we did, right?
Oh my gosh, I got it.
Okay. So then we went to Temple Dendara, which is also known as Hathor's temple. And she is the goddess in my deck of receiving, but just a very powerful feminine energy. And I'm trying to remember. I'm going to get you to share first on that one.
Yeah. So she, on the top of her temple, when you go inside and there's all the columns, that's where they have the astrological, the zodiacs. That's where it all came from. So they had mentioned this is the first temple that they had the science interwoven into, I guess, the actual, the markings on the wall. So you go in and this is where we went into the birthing chambers with the bats. We went into the underground tunnels, and that's where we danced on top of the temple. That's where we opened massive portals, creating this, the celebration of this union, and really bringing in the new earth. It was an amazing experience there.
So, so we're going to talk about the bats for a minute. So, there's many bats in some of these temples, right? And, I've seen bats before, that's all fine. But we went into the sacred room where we had to take this ladder that was metal, and it was, I think there was probably maybe 15 steps, 12 or 15.
Mm-hmm.
And we went up the steps into this tiny little room. It was the birthing room, and we all barely fit in there, the 7 of us. And we got in there and we looked up, and there was 3 bats on the ceiling, and I was like watching them, and I just had a feeling. I was like, oh, one of them is going to fly down. I just know they're going to dive bomb us. And then Marie was leading, and she was like, oh, we need to clear the energy in here. And for some reason I had my video on my camera, and this one bat was dive bombing Marie, actually, and we just broke into a fit of laughter in this little birthing room. And I found that Erica and I did this a lot in the group, even on the bus. We laughed a lot, and then everybody else would begin laughing because our laugh was infectious. And I felt like it was just sort of up leveling the energy of what was going on, within the group and also within the land. And you're right. And I remember being on the top singing and dancing. And what stands out for me too is the mosque music, right? That's what I call it. They would play the music where they would all go and pray several times a day. And I'd only ever heard that in movies, right? On Eat, Pray, Love. So for me to actually hear it in person on top of that, the roof of that temple was significant for me. And to see that couple that came up, it was an Egyptian couple, and she had all black on, and the only thing you could see was her eyes.
Yeah.
And she came over and she was watching us dance and sing on the roof of the temple. It was pretty profound.
So magical. Yes. Oh my God, those bats were hilarious. Yeah, and the transmutation that was taking place through the laughter. I mean, and we're talking laughing to the point of not talking and not saying anything and just shaking. We were those two.
We were those two, laughing like we had been smoking for 10 days, but we really hadn't. Yes. So much fun.
So fun.
So, right? And then, of course, we got to go to the essential oil shop, and we got to smell all of the essential oils, and we got to try them all on, and then we got to buy some essential oils to bring home. And so I've been really enjoying using my essential oils and my blends. There's blends for different gods and goddesses, which has been pretty amazing.
Yeah, I actually was wearing mine today. They're so good. They're just, they're so yummy. I love them.
They're very pure. So then let's talk about, this is a bucket list item. I mean, this trip was bucket list for me, but this was bucket list. And for those of you that, we both FaceTimed people. So we got to go on a hot air balloon early in the wee hours of the morning. We took a boat across the Nile, and then we drove with armored cars, police cars in front of us, because it was early in the morning. So I want to address this for a minute, because people said to me, did you feel safe on this trip? And I have to say, I did feel safe, because anywhere that may have been where there was big groups or there was any risk, we had a policeman actually accompany us with a massive gun. So I felt very safe. One time I did have a guard take his hand, and he was stroking my hair. And I mouthed to Erica, don't leave me, because I didn't want to be left alone. But that was about the only time that I personally did not feel safe on the trip.
Right. And we found out afterwards that the blonde hair and blue eyes is not, we actually found out that it was more of like a power thing. So for Velva having this blonde hair and striking blue eyes, they wanted to touch her hair because it was like they were actually anointing themselves with this sacred power. So that was interesting to find out. But you're right. Aside from that, I felt totally safe. I mean, Waleed was the man. He definitely held the fort down in every single way you can imagine. But yes, we were accompanied by guards, and I didn't for a second feel unsafe.
Yeah, and I want to reiterate that because I've had many people say to me that they didn't, why would I go? But I just want to reassure you that, I've done a lot of travel, and in this travel, I felt quite safe.
Yeah.
So, okay. So the balloon ride.
Yeah,
So there was what, maybe 20 of us in a basket, do you
I
think?
think so. Yeah, like there was little quadrants in between, but yeah, probably about 20 of us. Yeah.
And so we got up early in the morning and we each had a segment in the hot air balloon, and it would rise and the sun rose while we were up in the sky, and it was magical.
Oh, it was the glow of the sun there was just, it hits different, right? And you're floating up, like you're literally floating. The hot air balloon ride is not like, you're not ascending very quickly. And so to be there and seeing all the other balloons there as well, and the glow of the sun hitting the balloons and looking over Luxor was just absolute, right? It was in Luxor, right? It
Yes.
was absolutely amazing. And we had the Wi-Fi box, so we were FaceTiming some of our loved ones. It was just so magical to even allow for that experience to be shared with them as well. And that was, again, just another bucket. That was actually a bucket list for me, a hot air balloon. And to do that in Egypt, so it was like two boxes checked off at once. And what a way to do it. I mean, you can't really top that now.
No, you can't,
Yeah,
right?
no. And it worked out for us too because it was windy, right? Everything just fell into place. It was windy and we were able to get on there.
Yeah, they hadn't been able to actually go previous days. So they'd already said to us, we may not be able to do the hot air balloon ride. So that was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Um, okay, now let's talk about, oh, geez. Let's talk about the Temple Karnak.
Okay.
And, what was your experience there? So
I'm trying to even remember which one Karnak was. That
So
was in
it's
Luxor.
it's the home of Sekhmet.
Right. Oh my gosh. Okay. That was already, I just feel like the power. I mean, for you, you're still literally, you're still getting activated with that. But that was, I mean, all of it was magical and miraculous in its own ways. But to go in there, another thing, like doors just opened up for us where we were able to do things that most groups wouldn't be able to do. And when we were in there, we all got time to stand with Sekhmet herself. And Patar was in the middle chamber. And so I received a very firm but loving message from Sekhmet. It was very clear, probably one of the most clear messages that I had received in Egypt. And that time in that space was so sacred. And again, we were able to chant and we were able to each have our moment. And looking back at those photos unedited, it was like the orbs and the auras and the light. I mean, you can't even beat it. And it's just something that, you carry so near and dear to you. And as we left, all of these groups started coming. It was like, everything again just fell into place. We had that temple to ourselves. Again, perfect timing for each person to have their one-on-one with Sekhmet. And then as we leave, massive groups show up. It was amazing.
Mm-hmm. So, and what I want to add to that is when I walked in, there was a man that tried to catch my eyes, and I didn't know who he was. I didn't know if he was part of the police. I had no idea who he was. And he did this to me and looked me in the eyes. And I kind of dismissed him at first because I didn't know who he was.
Yeah.
And then he looked at me again directly in the eyes and did this. And then I thought, okay, he's someone who has a message. And so, I connected with him, looking at him. And then that part I'll get to in a minute. But each temple, there is men that are called like temple keepers. They're custodians of the temple. And what they do is they dedicate their life to, taking care of the temple, whatever temple that is. And this man in particular really connected with my heart. You know, he just was very gentle and wise, and he knew, and he was guiding you. And in this temple, there's an opening in the top, and there's this white ray of light that comes down. And, you know, we haven't really shared very many photos of it because it's quite sacred. But the light comes in and you hold it in your hands. And the pictures are all completely unedited, but they are magical. And Sekhmet's statue is in there, and I just got down and bowed down on my feet to her, because it was just such an experience that we were able to. Then we moved over to the 7 gates of Osiris, and you know, there's literally like 7 frames, and you can stand with your back against it and your arms outstretched. And that man that had caught my attention is actually a very gifted healer that came because he was called to that day with our group, and he will just show up. And he did anoint many of our third eyes, connecting our third eyes and our hearts in the group. And so I understood why he had looked at me before I went in to that temple.
Yeah, and we also got to in that one little nook, there was the 7 keys in the pyramid that we went into. So in this one little kind of sacred nook, behind the seven gates, some of the hieroglyphs had been worn out, but in the one area was the 7 keys, so the ankhs stacked in the shape of a pyramid, and we all got to have our moment with the 7 keys, which are like portals into these dimensions, you know, and we got to anoint our third eye, like just have our hands on the temple wall and place our third eye directly onto the 7 keys. And that was so magical and special as well. And I actually had a moment where one of our other group members, she was standing in those 7 gates, and I went up to her and had a little bit of a healing exchange there where her and I had done some work on one another. And that was so special as well, to be doing that work with, you know, another sister in such a sacred and powerful place. So yeah, that was a magical day. They all were, as I keep saying, but
it was amazing. Absolutely. And like, just looking at the hieroglyphics, you know, some of the hieroglyphics are so preserved in some of the temples. It's just like they've been freshly carved, right? So just, I've always been attracted to the Ankh my entire life, right? And I never knew why. The Ankh meaning the breath of life, the key of life. I know, here we are with our Ankhs.
we are with them.
Yeah, here we are with our Ankh.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
Yeah. So, okay, the 7 gates, the temple of Luxor. Okay. We went to the temple of Luxor. Here I am asking you.
I know everything's such a blur. I was looking back and I was like, which temple was this and where were we at this time? Because there was so much to do. Days were literally jam-packed. The temple of Luxor. So that would have been, okay, so that's where we had the Sphinx Avenue. We went back in the evening.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that was where the obelisks were. That was my first time experiencing that and seeing the obelisk right there, and it was like, whoa.
Yes, so there was that, and there was, so something, that was the first time. So being an energy healer, you know, I work with my hands, you know, as Erica does, and we feel energy in our hands and transmute energy back and forth. So I'm careful what I touch and where I place my hands. And one of the ladies, one of the guards had said, you know, do you pray? And she said, yes. And so she said, come, I want to show you something. And you could see on the wall that there was a hieroglyph that was, people had placed their hands on because the oil from their skin had changed the color of the hieroglyph. And so I was a bit hesitant at first, but I put my hand a couple inches away and I asked, you know, is it safe for me to put my hand here? And I heard yes, intuitively. And then I put my hand on there, and that was the very first time I got an energy running through into my heart from the hieroglyph. And I was like, it was like a rush, and it was pretty powerful.
I remember that. I remember you experiencing that, and it was you, myself, and Mikkel who went into that area. And remember the guard, he kept saying, good luck, and pointing at it. And we weren't really sure what he was meaning. at first. And we're like, do we touch this? Like, is this sacred? And yeah, exactly that. The oil stained wall, you know, it was almost like a black
Yeah.
oil from the hands and going into that area. And then we also went into that other chamber where it almost felt heavy. Do you remember that one area she had taken us through? It was kind of almost kitty corner to that area where that the good luck um, hieroglyph was. And there, it felt like to me when I was there that this is where the priestesses would come to channel, but in secrecy. It was very cool energy there. You know, again, this remembering of just being like, ooh, something happened here. You might not be able to pinpoint it, but you could just feel the shift.
You just knew it.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree with you. So Nikel just joined us. Yeah, she's on
Yeah,
there now.
I can see her. Hi, Nicole.
Yeah. So she just popped on. Okay, so let's move over. Now this is like day 6. So like we said, this literally was like the spiritual amazing race. And, you know, when you even go back to the pyramid and how you were sort of bent over, you know, going through the tiny spaces, like I was sore the next day. So, and I work out a lot, right? So it's just interesting how your body
Yeah.
had to move through and you just kept going because it was like the energy kept you going because you wanted to see what the next thing was. So let's talk about the, I'm going to move on to a few things here, but let's move on to the Temple of Thoth.
Oh, okay. So that was a quick visit.
It was.
That was a quick visit. It was like in the middle of a village, you know, Waleed had even said that, you know, they had just kind of, he didn't know about it or he didn't know its location. And it was Marie who said, no, there's got to be the Temple of Thoth. And so we had a quick little visit there. That one was gated off. Again, it was just like this, you know, the size of a house roughly. And you go in and of course the hieroglyphics there were really powerful. You know, we were all placing our third eye on there, having our moment in the small chambers that were there. And actually something interesting that I learned was the inside the walls, the hieroglyphs were carved. What, do you remember that? Oh, and when there was a hieroglyph on the exterior of the temple or that it was carved differently, some were carved on the outside and some were carved moving into the stone. Do you remember that?
Well, even when you think of, oh, which temple was it? Jeepers, creepers. On the outside, even of Isis's temple, it was definitely carved different, right? The stone was,
Yes.
it was, I don't know how to explain it, but it was definitely carved differently than it was on the inside, the hieroglyphs for sure. Okay, let's move to, I'm looking at these pictures.
Oh, there's so many though. It was just so, oh man, so fulfilling.
Okay, so let's talk about when we took the horse and carriage. So we were on a ship for 4 days, and I have to actually say, I'm good with not doing that again.
Yeah.
It was nice to be on the Nile, but for that long, I would probably not do it again. But it was amazing just being on the water and having a different scenario. So from there, we took a horse and carriage, and it was the one time that they really firmly said,
Yeah.
stick with your partner. We each, you know, had a buddy, and don't leave your buddy because you're going to go in a horse and carriage by yourself from the boat to the temple. And
That's where we went.
yeah, even talking to you, I'm getting dizzy because I'm going back into these energies, right? Are you, yeah.
Reactivated, yeah.
So I'm like, wow. So we got a really good driver, right? And a buggy. And we just, he said, go straight to your buggy, get on there and let him take you and then wait for us and we'll all walk through, because the people that were selling things were so aggressive. They would literally try and move you and isolate you. We did lose a lady along the way, Sarah. In the one spot, she did get left at the Great Pyramid by accident because they did actually sort of move her out of the way. She was safe. She was
Yeah.
totally in the compound. But they definitely, the people that are selling things, that is the one thing that I would say that
Yeah.
they're very aggressive, right?
Especially at that place. That was probably one of the most aggressive, aside from Kamambo, leaving there, going back. But yeah, that was one that they did prepare us for. And not to be, to scare us. It was just like, make sure that you stick with your people, keep your head down, don't give your attention to them, that sort of thing.
Yes, exactly. Not that they were dangerous, it's just they were
No.
aggressive in selling their wares, right?
Yeah.
Okay, now let's talk about swimming in the Nile, okay? Somebody had said to me before we went, there's crocodiles in the Nile. And I'm like, okay, like I'm used to swimming in the ocean and Laverne, the tiger shark, is around. But I was like, am I okay with swimming in the Nile with a crocodile? But we have since learned that the crocodiles have all been hunted and there actually isn't any crocodiles in the Nile.
I believe Waleed had said that there could be one small area that they could be, but yeah, they all hunt them. Like I held the baby crocodile. Did you end up holding one?
No,
They
I
could,
did not hold him.
yeah, they caged them, and I loved holding that little guy. He was so cute. His little belly was just like, I don't know, little so plump. But yeah, the Nile was, of course you'd see birds, and along the side there was some cattle and things like that. But when we did go swimming in the Nile, they took us to a place that was, less boat traffic, way less polluted. We got to talk about the real stuff too, because there was a lot of garbage in the Nile where we were on the cruise ship. And I mean, with all the cruise ships that were there, you can imagine the pollution in the water as well. And so, you and I were hesitant to even want to go into the water. And we were both like, so we were hesitant. But when we did go onto the smaller boat and near the Nubian village, that was, way less busy. You could see down into the bottom of the water. It was pure there. There wasn't garbage floating around. And I think I was the first to jump in. And it was so fresh and cool. I mean, Canadian waters are nothing like, the ocean. So I'm used to I'm used to swimming in a cold lake or dunking in a river. So that was super refreshing. And it felt kind of like, I'm not sure what the word they used there, but very much like a baptism, right? Renewal, cleansing of the body, mind, and spirit. So that was really powerful. And then you had a beautiful meditation that you hosted for the group of us, and that was, very powerful as well. We all stood in a circle holding hands. At that point there must have been 9 of us women, including Marie's daughter, and Marie herself. And that was just a beautiful water meditation to be in the Nile and to be activating the original frequencies of the Nile as well. So not only were we getting cleansed by the Nile, we were bringing in the energies to cleanse the Nile as well. So again, it was this beautiful exchange of energies and of work that we're doing for not only ourselves, but for the elements.
Mm-hmm.
It was
Absolutely.
amazing.
And I'm glad you brought that up because people had also said to me, oh, the Nile is really dirty. And it's true. When they farm along it, they just put their garbage in it. They burn garbage along the side. Their animals are tethered to the side. And that part, but there was parts that were clean, right? Just like anything. And I wouldn't have went in if it wasn't. It was clean and the sand, there was big sand hills behind us. And the little girl in me wanted to go run up and slide down, right? It was just beautiful, right? That part.
Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed that. So we did that. Now I want to talk about, let's talk about the hanging church. No, let's back up a bit. So, this is my fave.
Yeah.
You know what I'm going to say. Those of you that know me know I'm the Isis girl, right?
Yeah.
She's the first chapter in my book, Ancient Secrets of the Goddesses. And she's sort of, she's the goddess for me. I call her the kick your butt goddess, but she really helps me push through my fears in life in connecting with her frequency. So we got to go. We got up really early that morning. I think it was 3:30 that morning, right?
We were ready at 4. Like we had to be in the lobby at 4, so we were up early. Yeah.
Yes, and we got to take a boat, and it was the full moon over the Nile, and the Nile was like glass, and the full moon was shining down, and we were just slowly, quietly, we made our way over to the Temple of Philae, which is on its own island. And we were in the dark, and we walked along in the dark into the temple, and they led us into
The
the
holy
room.
yeah, and that
Yeah.
electricity was actually not working in the temple that morning. So we were meant to be in the dark because typically they would have some lights, but it wasn't working.
Yeah.
And it was, yeah, that pitch black was, well, it was part of our activation too.
Yes. And there was an altar, and we all sat on the floor, on a wooden floor in a circle. And we were all sort of, intending what our intention was and our declaration for our work for the world. And it was really powerful. And then we actually walked over and we sat on the wall in front of another temple, and we watched the sun rise. That was incredible.
That was probably one of the most, actually, that temple itself was also super powerful for me. The energy in the Holy of Holies, when we had our hands on that stone, I actually became nauseated and almost fainted. So I was crouching down because the energy was so powerful. And once we did our reclamation of truth there, as we're coming out and seeing the glow again of the sunrise, the solar codes coming up, and then sitting along that wall as a group with all the cats, all the feline energy around us, and Marie drumming in the background and calling in the energy of Ra, the sun, and it was just so magical.
Mm-hmm. And so there was a room there called the birthing room, and it's only been open for 2 years. And I spent so much time alone in that room by myself. And I could just feel the energy, because they say when something just opens, the energy is really strong and it's fresh, right? So you could feel it because not a lot of people have moved through. And so that experience was pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Feeling that.
That's
And then something that I always wanted to do is I'm over on TikTok. And so I'd always wanted to do the Sandra Bullock, TikTok dancing. And so I'd mentioned that to Ava, Marie's daughter. And then I said, we should dance to the song Walk Like an Egyptian. And so Marie literally had her, music box, and we danced in the very center and played Walk Like an Egyptian, and the guards came and they were all just standing, watching and observing us. So how was that experience for you?
Oh man, it was amazing. I know before that she had played another medicine song. So getting up and, allowing for your body to move to the medicine. And Marie said, she's like, the music used to be in the temple, so it's time to bring that back. So again, we were, bringing back those frequencies and the essence of that within the seven sisters, so powerful and potent. And then dancing to Walk Like an Egyptian was so fun. The cats were all around us. It was a magical moment for sure. Like the golden sun, it was like golden hour dancing, all in our white. We were all wearing white, very sacred and pure. And yeah, just dancing and having fun. It was what they used to do there.
It was pretty incredible. Okay, are you okay if we go over for a few minutes?
Because totally fine.
Okay. Okay, so then we ended up, so we did some interflying. So we flew from Cairo to Luxor, and then from Luxor back to Cairo in order to accommodate all of this. And that in itself is an experience. So let's talk a little bit about the hanging church and the crypt.
Okay, yeah. So actually leading up to this, I was getting some back pain. Marie came in to do some body code work on me, and you were in the room, and we had talked about where this energy was coming from. Where was this pain in my body? Where was it originating from? And we kind of had gotten it down to the 12th rib, which brought us back to Adam and Eve. So there was a massive religious aspect to this trip for me, and to clear for for the collective as well. And so moving into this church, for me, it was a lot of clearing of the distortions of religion, the false light, false perceptions of it. And I didn't necessarily feel the way that I did in other temples, but I knew when we were there, we were doing massive clearings. You'd seen people, it was loud in there, where Marie even said, this should be more of a quiet place. And people were going up and touching things and kissing, and it was a lot. But what was I going to add to that with the crypt and the religious aspects. Oh, something I had learned from Walid was speaking of the natives to Egypt were actually all Christian, which I didn't know that. And over time, Christianity had become abolished, and now they're 90% Muslims. So it was, even though I didn't, like I said, I didn't experience the same, activations that I would. I knew that for me, it was more of a clearing through the religious views and whatnot to create that unity of just what the Word of God originally meant for everyone. So that was a cool experience, going in and seeing the architecture and how old it was, and the benches and the ashes. They had the ashes and urns of different religious priests there as well. So that was really cool to see that and witness.
It was. Okay, now Juliana was asking, why is it called the Hanging Church?
Oh, yeah. So I don't even remember. This one was about, wasn't it about like did it have something to do with the chair?
Well, you could actually see there was glass in the floor, and you could see that the church was hanging, right? Because it was over top. Yes.
Yes. Oh, that's why, because there was underground tunnels
Yes.
for people to be able to escape and hide in.
Yes.
And this was in old Cairo as well.
Yes.
So they used to have to actually go under. They had these hidden doors under rugs for them to be able to go underneath. So they called it the Hanging Church because it was like it was suspended. Yes, that's exactly what it was. Yes.
That's right. And the tour was actually called
Tablets of Light.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Tablets of Light here with Marie Cobley. She has her own website, and she's on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube. She has tons of stuff on YouTube. She's awesome. She's so much fun.
She is awesome. I'm going to be interviewing her in the next couple of weeks, so stay tuned.
Yes,
because I'll be interviewing her also. Yes. Okay, so let's talk about, so the crypt was the last place that Mother Mary and Jesus were, in case anyone is wondering where the crypt is. And there's a holy well there from where they drank the water.
Yeah. We got all of that too, which was super cool.
Very much so. Okay, now where else did we go? What else do you want to add in there?
So we did no, we talked about the Serapeum. Something that I would like to add about the Serapeum though, the pre-hieroglyphics on the walls. That was something that drew me in a lot because they have writings on the walls, different actually writings in different areas of the Serapeum that they actually don't even know where they came from or what they are. And interestingly enough, I had channeled a language last year, and it looked very similar to that. So I wanted to add that there are, of course, there's so many mysteries to Egypt still that they're still discovering. And even we got to drive past that one tomb site that they just discovered 6 months ago that was buried in the sand, and there was still ceramics. They had found pottery and ceramics still from that timeline that of course was closed off because they're doing investigations and whatnot. But yeah, that was another sacred site that we got to just drive past it and see as well. That's by the step pyramid. So we got to witness that in the Saqqara.
Yeah, there was so many things. Like every day we would always say, we can't top this, right? The other really amazing thing that we did is we went to a place where they used alabaster and they made like vases and statues. And where is mine? I'm just going to grab my vase here quick. So this is the vase that I actually got. It's alabaster, and here's an ankh. And we have the different gods and goddesses on here, and the Eye of Ra. And this is a small one. And so, of course, we all come back. But the special thing for me there, and I got to glue it together, but there was a man who was making the prayer of Isis. And it's cracked in half here on my table, and I don't want to pick it up. But he did it all by hand, and he was making it as we were standing there. And I bought that from him, and he finished it, and he sent it to the hotel. So it was very special to be able to walk into that shop and see that they're actually making these. Yes, there's replicas that are not true alabaster around Egypt, but we actually got to see this, and we also got to go and see to a papyrus shop and get some true papyrus prints.
I actually have mine here, so I can show you one of mine.
Okay, good.
I got my Bastet. This is my Bastet kitty. So yeah, I use plants to create this really, really durable paper-like material, and then they place the art on top. So you and I both purchased some beautiful pieces there, and they showed us how it was made again. And yeah, it was a really cool experience to see that, because I had never heard of this before. So
it was amazing. So what did you take away from all of this? What is one of the greatest things that you took away from this?
You know what, if I could kind of compact everything, it would probably be clarity. For me, I just have such a clear vision of who I am and who I came here to be. And I think that's truly what Marie's intention is with the Tablets of Light tour. You're going back and you're activating your original blueprinting of who you are. And so those codes, they've always been within us. They've just maybe been laying dormant. And so for me coming back, I have this clarity of a vision of my mission here and of the work that I want to do. And I'm so ready. I'm just like, you and I have talked about this, Marie and I have talked about this. I'm sure other group members as well have felt the same, where it's just like, the time is now, no more child's play. Like, I'm here to do the work. And so that's what I feel. I just have this clarity over me, and I just feel like I know who I am, and I'm ready to do the things that I've been shying away from.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. It was like, I always knew I needed to go. I never expected to receive the gifts that I did, not only spiritually, but physically, being there and feeling the fire that I'm feeling in my body, which we are trying to tame and ground. But also the peace that I feel inside my body, I've never felt in my entire life.
And I feel like we're still getting more from this, as we go through and we discuss, and as we look back on our photos, there's so much more that we will continue to be activated with. And there's so much more that I think from a conscious level, it's hard for us to actually comprehend. And so as we go out and we're doing our human things here, it's going to be gifted to us and hand dropped at perfect times for us to be reactivated and re-stimulated and receiving more of those energy transmissions. Like, now that we have those frequencies activated, I don't want to say now that they're new within us, because again, they've always been there. We're going to constantly be receiving more and more from Egypt, even from here.
I agree with you. And for those of you that are listening and you're like, what are light codes? What are these girls talking about? You can just Google that, and you can go on Marie's website, which is mariecoverley.com. Is your website up yet?
Not yet. We're actually in the works. We're putting in some new content, and we're making it all come together. So.
And what's your website going to be called?
It's going to be thegalacticalchemist.ca. You can find me on Instagram as well as _galactic_alchemist. And my services will be up on my website along with upcoming fun events.
Which is exciting.
Yeah.
So we're in the works of talking. We have some exciting things that we're going to be doing together. Yeah. In particular, some of it's Egyptian, some of it's not. But we've been guided to do some teachings together and do some sharings together. So stay tuned, because that will be unraveling. It is, and we're meeting soon. And it'll be definitely high level awareness. But don't think, if you're guided to come, don't think that you need to have something. Just join us, right? If you're guided, your heart wants to be there, please join us.
Absolutely. It's going to be fun. We have lots in the works, and yeah, we can't wait to put it out there and share that with everyone.
So I just want to say, if you're thinking of going to Egypt, go. right? The energy has come online. You know, there was so much to see. It was so fun. So do it, right? Do it sooner than later. Do it when you're younger if you can, and enjoy every bit of it. And but before, let's talk about the food quick, because someone had said to me, what did you think of the food?
Well, I was swollen AF the entire time. I was so puffy. The lymphedema I experienced there was huge. So, you know, I eat one little falafel and blow up. So, not to say that it wasn't good, but my body definitely prefers a lighter diet, especially in a hotter climate. But we have tried the shawarmas there. The falafels, my favorite, and I think you enjoyed as well, was the fresh mango juice. Like I could drink that all day. But then of course we go to the hotels and you have more of the continental foods. And Waleed would stop us off at certain, you know, street food vendors where he'd have, you know, a family business of people that he knew, and we would get to experience their version or their take on the wraps and the sandwiches and things like that. So yeah, it was really good. And on the cruise ship, we did experience the Egyptian night for the dinner, and man, that food was so good. The seasonings and the spices and the carbs, it was so good. And I mean, when you're there, you have to experience it all. It's part of the experience. It's part of the trip. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I hope that all of you have gotten from this that there's a positive side, even though, you know, we see things on the news or we're told things. We just really wanted to bring to light, you know, that if you're guided, go. This is, you know, what we brought away from the sacred sites. And I would definitely go back again.
yeah.
And I am planning to do that. So I want to thank you for being my partner in the light codes, the lymphedema, and the laughter, because we certainly did laugh. That's why we were calling ourselves Beavis and Butthead, because we kind of had that kind of humor.
Yeah. Yeah. And thank
We
you
were.
so much for making my journey as special as it was. I mean, it would be so different if you weren't there. And thank you so much for having me on your Wisdom Weaver as well. I super appreciate it. I'm super excited to co-create with you.
Me too. No, thank you for sharing the Egypt trip with me. And I just knew I had to go and be part of it. And you just made it easy. And there's just such a good connection between you and I. So I'm grateful for that.
Absolutely.
And I look forward to what we bring, you know, forward together in the future. So thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we'll have lots of fun in the future as well.
We will. So I see many of you have been on here. I just want to thank you for joining us. And those of you that are listening to the replay, if you have questions in the replay, go ahead and ask in the comments and we will come on and check it out and answer them the best that we can. So have an amazing holiday Monday and we'll see you soon. Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.